I overheard my fiancée saying, "Once that house is finally in my name, I'm dumping this pathetic man in front of everyone." So, I let her walk into a family meeting she'll never forget. It was just a Tuesday afternoon, and I'd finished up some paperwork earlier than expected. My plan was simple: head home, grab some dinner, and maybe relax a bit. But as soon as I pulled into the parking lot, something felt off. It was too quiet, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. I checked my phone, tapping out a quick text to Sloan. "Back early, running a bit late. See you around 6. Then, I heard it. My window was cracked, just enough to catch voices coming from inside my apartment. There was Sloan's voice as clear as day. I froze, hand still on the door handle, engine idling. "Once that house is finally in my name, I'm dumping this pathetic man in front of everyone." My heart dropped into my stomach. I couldn't move. Couldn't even breathe. "Are you really doing it?" Someone else asked, probably Taryn. She was one of her college friends, always a little too eager to get involved in Sloan's plans. "Hell yeah," Sloan responded, her voice full of excitement. "I've been dealing with his boring personality for 4 years. 4 years of pretending I care about freight routes and logistics. Do you know how many times I've sat through dinner with his family while they talk about trucking? I want to die, every time. I felt like someone had just punched me in the gut. This wasn't just a slip of the tongue. This was real. This was the woman I'd been living with for years. The one I thought I was building a future with. Planning to destroy me for a house." "Wait, but isn't his name going on the house too?" asked Alexis, another friend of hers. "Yeah, but my dad says there are ways around that. After we get married, I can prove he's never home, that I've done all the work on this relationship. And once the wedding is over, I'll divorce him and take the house in the settlement. Easy, clean. The lawyers already got it figured out." I felt a cold sweat break out across my back. This was real, and I was just a stepping stone. A means to an end. "Damn, that's ruthless," Taryn said, but there was no hesitation in her voice. It was almost like they were planning a heist. "Right. But it's all worth it. Once I'm a homeowner, I'll have this divorce glow-up story. And my followers will love it. I'll be free to be me. It'll be content gold." The laughter that followed made my stomach turn. They were planning it like it was a game. A show. My life wasn't a game. I stayed there, rooted to the spot, listening as Sloan kept talking. Every word digging deeper into my chest. "Once I'm single again, my engagement rate will skyrocket. I'm predicting 10,000, maybe 15,000 followers. You know how it works, right? Divorce stories are viral gold." I couldn't take it anymore. My fingers gripped the door handle so tightly my knuckles went white. They were laughing. Talking about how I was just a prop. Nothing more. Nothing less. I turned off the truck, sat there for a few moments, trying to calm the storm of thoughts swirling in my head. I didn't even know what I was feeling: shock, anger, betrayal. A bit of all three. The woman I was planning to marry, the one I'd supported for years, was using me. Using me to get a house and followers. But one thing became clear in that moment. I couldn't let her get away with it. She thought she had it all figured out. But she had made one critical mistake. She hadn't covered her tracks. She'd let me hear, and now I had all the ammunition I needed. I sat in the truck for another few minutes, then pulled my phone out. I sent Sloan a text, simple, cold, running late. Won't be back until 6. Have fun with your friends. The response came almost immediately. Okay, babe. Love you. Just having girl talk. I could barely stomach it. Girl talk. Yeah, right? I sat there for a while longer, my mind racing. 4 years. 4 years of my life with a woman who never even cared. And now, I knew exactly what I had to do. She was about to find out that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I sat in the truck for what felt like hours, my mind racing. I didn't even know where to start. The apartment, the life I thought we were building together. It all felt like a lie. Sloan wasn't the woman I thought she was. How had I missed this? Was I that blind? The smell of the parking lot lingered in my nose. Exhaust, stale air, the faint scent of old coffee from the cup I had left in the cup holder. It was just a normal afternoon, but for me, everything had changed. My hands were still shaking as I stared at my phone, unsure of what to do next. I couldn't even wrap my head around how easily Sloan had manipulated me. The years I had spent supporting her, pushing her dreams forward, I thought I was helping her chase something meaningful, something real. But all this time, I had been playing a part in her little social media empire. Her constant posts, her obsession with influencer culture, it was all so draining. But I told myself it was just her thing. People have their hobbies, right? Some people collect stamps. Some people post 100 pictures of their coffee. I just never imagined it would go this far. I could hear her voice again, the way she talked about me as if I was just a tool, a prop in her grand scheme. Pathetic man, she called me. I tried to shake it off, but the words dug deep, making my chest tighten with anger. It wasn't just about the house. That was the final straw, but looking back, it was clear that she had been using me for a long time. Every time she posted something about her dream life, her perfect love, it was all about her followers. How many people were watching her life unfold? How many likes she could rack up? None of it had been real. I wasn't her partner. I was an accessory to her brand. A brand that she could throw away when it no longer served her. I couldn't stand the thought of it anymore. The thought of her lying to me, planning my humiliation for the sake of her Instagram followers. She wanted to turn our lives into a content creation for people who had never even met us. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I still had to go inside. Still had to face her, like nothing had changed. I had no idea what I was going to say, but I had to say something. The silence in the truck was deafening as I sat there, the engine running, the cool breeze brushing against my face through the cracked window. I thought about the last few months, the way she had kept me at arm's length, the way her excitement for our future seemed more about the image we could present than the actual relationship we were supposed to be building. Eventually, I put the truck in gear and drove up to the building. As I got out of the truck, I could hear her voice inside laughing. Her typical, everything's fine, laugh, as if everything in her life was just perfect. It hit me again. How long had I been playing this part? How many times had I sat through dinner, quietly nodding, pretending that everything was okay, all while she was secretly plotting her escape? I walked into the apartment, the door swinging open, with an easy push. Sloan was in the kitchen, humming to herself, scrolling through something on her phone. She turned to me with a smile, the same smile she always had when she wanted to appear as the perfect fiancé. "Hey, babe. You're home early," she said, almost cheerfully. I didn't smile back. I didn't feel like smiling. The words stuck in my throat, but I forced them out. "We need to talk." She raised an eyebrow, looking confused. "What's wrong?" I wasn't sure how to say it, how to break it to her that everything I thought we had was a lie. "It's about the house," I said. She immediately tensed, but then tried to cover it up with a laugh. "Oh, come on, babe. You know I'm excited. We're about to be homeowners. This is our future." "No," I said, cutting her off. "It's about more than that. I know what you were planning." Her face changed instantly, that smile faltering. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. I heard everything. The house, the wedding, the divorce. It was all part of your plan, wasn't it?" Her eyes widened, and she froze, her phone still in her hand. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you were going to use me. You were going to take the house, leave me with nothing, and then play it off for social media clout? Make a viral post about your divorce glow up." I stepped closer, my voice steady but filled with disbelief. "How long have you been planning this, Sloan? How long have you been using me for followers, for content?" She didn't answer. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes shifted, and I saw it, the realization that I wasn't going to just stand there, and let her manipulate me anymore. I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was. The silence hung in the air between us. Finally, I said, I'm done. I'm ending this, the engagement, the relationship. All of it. Her face turned pale.
What? No.
You're joking, right? No joke. I felt something cold wash over me. It wasn't relief. It wasn't joy. But I knew it was the right thing to do. The house is off. I've already backed out. Her expression twisted, from shock to anger in a split second. You can't do that. We've been planning this for months. Not anymore. I said, my voice firm. You don't get to walk all over me anymore. It's over. She stood there, blinking, as if trying to process what was happening. The tension between us was suffocating. I didn't wait for her to speak. I turned and walked toward the door. I'll be out later to grab my things. I called over my shoulder. She didn't stop me. The next few days passed in a blur. It was hard to focus on anything. I spent most of my time thinking about that conversation, replaying it over and over in my mind. How had I not seen it? How had I not known what she was really like? I knew I had to get out of that apartment. Sloan was gone. Bah, but the weight of everything still hung in the air like a bad smell I couldn't shake off. The apartment felt empty, even though it wasn't. It felt like it was filled with all the things I should have seen but didn't. I tried to keep busy. I worked, I cleaned. I did everything I could to keep my mind occupied. But every time I stopped, the thoughts came rushing back. I kept imagining her face when I told her it was over. She'd look stunned, like she couldn't believe I'd actually called her bluff. I should have felt good about it. I should have felt proud of myself for standing up, for finally putting an end to the lies. But instead, all I felt was exhaustion. A bone, deep kind of tiredness that made it hard to breathe. I tried to think about the house. It had been such a huge deal for both of us. For years, we'd talked about it. What it would look like. Where we'd put everything. What the future would be like. The plans were always bigger than the house itself. We'd even started looking at places. Nothing too fancy, but something real. A 3-bedroom ranch in Bayside. It was listed at $470,000, which was more than I ever thought I could afford, but I'd been saving for 6 years. I had $85,000 set aside. Sloan had $12,000. It wasn't enough for the full price, but it would have been enough to make it work. She had been so excited about it, constantly posting updates online. Every time we took a step forward, every little milestone, she made sure everyone knew. First-time homeowner vibes. She'd caption the photos. Manifesting abundance. The hashtags were endless. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized that it wasn't just about the house for her. It was never about the house. It was about the image, the followers, the likes. The plan had always been for me to help her get the house, then for her to use me, until it was no longer convenient. I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation, though. How she planned to ditch me once the house was in her name, to publicly humiliate me for social media likes. The more I replayed it, the more I realized how much of her life was just a facade. Everything was for the brand, for the Instagram followers, for the content. And I had been a part of it, just another prop in her show. I kept thinking about how she always compared herself to Bella Hadid, how she'd always talk about how she could be a model, how she could do a runway if she really wanted to. But that wasn't her. That wasn't who she was. She wasn't Bella Hadid. She wasn't even close. I'd spent so many months supporting her, helping her edit videos, suggesting captions, teaching her about lighting and angles. I thought I was being supportive. I thought it was what a partner was supposed to do. But all she ever wanted was a better angle for her photos. More likes. More validation. I had a moment of clarity one morning, while I was sitting in the kitchen, drinking my coffee. The sunlight streamed in through the window, warming the room, but it felt cold in my chest. I stared at my phone for a while, debating whether I should call the real estate agent. I had already made up my mind to back out of the house deal. but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread in my stomach. I dialed the agent's number, and when they answered, I told them, I need to back out of the offer. They hesitated for a moment, probably surprised. Are you sure? You'll lose your earnest money deposit. That's $5,000 just for backing out. I'm sure, I said without even thinking twice. Please just send me the paperwork. The agent agreed and I hung up. I felt nothing. No relief. No satisfaction. Just an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I had just canceled our future. The house, the dream, everything we had talked about. It was all gone. But in that moment, I realized something. It wasn't really our future. It had only ever been her future. And I was just a pawn in her game. I walked around the apartment for a while, aimlessly picking up things, putting them back down. I couldn't focus. My thoughts kept drifting back to the dinner we'd planned with both of our families. The one I'd set up to reveal everything. I knew Sloan would flip. I knew she'd never see it coming. The thought made me feel cold, but not in a bad way. She was going to be humiliated. She was going to be exposed. And it wasn't going to be like she thought. She thought she could break up with me publicly and watch me fall apart. But I was the one who was going to make the public statement. I was the one who was going to show her that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I started making plans for the dinner, figuring out the details. I called my mom. Can you set up a family dinner for Friday night? Both families. Somewhere nice. Sure, honey, she said. What's the occasion? I'll explain it on Friday, I replied. Just make sure everyone's there. Sloan's parents too. I could hear the confusion in her voice. Everything okay? It will be, I said. Just make sure they're all there. I hung up, feeling strangely calm. It was happening. This was it. The point of no return. I was about to take control. And Sloan wasn't going to see it coming. The next few days felt like a fog. I went through the motions, work, eating, sleep, but none of it felt real. Every time I saw Sloan's face, every time I remembered her words, the weight of the betrayal sank deeper into my chest. It wasn't just that she planned to use me, it was the fact that I had trusted her, loved her. I kept asking myself how I had missed it, how I hadn't seen the signs sooner. I spent hours pacing my apartment, making sure every detail of the family dinner was in place. I couldn't wait to see Sloan's face when I exposed her, when I called her out in front of everyone, showing her for what she truly was. A liar. A manipulator. It wasn't going to be like she imagined. The way she thought she would break up with me, humiliate me in front of my family. It was all going to backfire. Sloan had no idea what I was about to do. Every time I thought about how she'd laugh with her friends, how she'd planned it all out like a game, I couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust. She had used me for so long, and I'd been too blind to see it. But now, it was my turn. I called my mom to finalize the details for the dinner. Everything's ready for Friday, I asked, pacing around my living room. Everything's set, she said. What's going on, honey? You sound different. I'll explain when I see you, I replied. Just make sure everyone's there. Sloan's parents too, it's important. She paused for a moment, but then responded. Of course, I'll make sure we're all there. The next few days felt like they dragged on. Every time I saw Sloan, I played the part. Smiling, acting like everything was fine, but inside, I was boiling with anger, disappointment, and something else I couldn't name. It wasn't just betrayal. It was rage. I had spent 4 years with this woman. Thinking I knew her, thinking I was building a life with her, but she had been building her own little empire, using me as a stepping stone. The house. The house was supposed to be our future. Together. But now, I realized, it had only ever been her future. She had manipulated me into thinking it was something we were doing as a team. And the worst part, I let her. When the day of the family dinner finally arrived, I felt a strange calm. There was no more doubt in my mind. I knew what I had to do. It was time to end the charade. To expose her for the person she truly was. I had already backed out of the house deal. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me any longer. I put on my best suit, something I hadn't worn in months. It felt strange, like I was preparing for a battle, but that was what this was, wasn't it? A battle. A fight for my dignity. For my peace of mind. I arrived at the restaurant early, around 6:45. It was an upscale steakhouse in Midtown, the kind of place that felt fancy, but not too over the top. White tablecloths, soft mood lighting, the scent of sizzling steaks in the air. The kind of place where you go to celebrate something big, or where things can go terribly wrong. My family arrived first. Mom, Dad, my brothers Rowan and Levi, and their wives. We took one side of the big table, settling in and chatting as we waited. I could feel the tension in the air, but I didn't show it. Sloan's parents were the next to arrive, her mother, Valentine, in a nice dress, and her dad, Robert, looking like he'd just come from some sales meeting. They made their way to the table, exchanging pleasantries with my family. Sloan arrived at exactly 7, just as I had expected. She was dressed to impress, of course. A tight black dress, heels, her hair curled just so, her makeup flawless. She looked good. She always did when she was putting on a show. But I saw through it now. She smiled at everyone, kissed my mom on the cheek, hugged my brothers, and complimented my sisters-in-law on their outfits. She was playing the part of the perfect fiancée, and everyone was buying it. We all sat down, and she placed her hand on my leg under the table, her eyes sparkling as if nothing had changed. But I knew what was coming, and I wasn't about to let her control the narrative anymore. The waiter brought our drinks, and the conversation continued around me, but I wasn't really listening. I was just waiting for the right moment. And when the time came, I stood up, gently pushing my chair back. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at me. But Sloan's face lit up with that familiar smile, probably thinking I was going to say something sweet, something romantic, maybe announce a wedding date, maybe do something to impress her Instagram followers. But instead, I spoke calmly, but with a finality that couldn't be ignored. I wanted everyone here tonight because I have an announcement, I said. Sloan's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained composure, her hand still resting on my leg. What's going on? She asked, her voice light, but I could see the nervous energy in her eyes. I'm ending this, I said, my voice steady. The engagement is off. I'm breaking up with you. The table went silent. Everyone looked at me, then at Sloan. Her face froze, the smile slowly melting away. It took her a moment to process what I had just said. What? She asked, her voice shaking slightly. Are you joking? No joke, I replied. Earlier this week, I overheard you and your friends at my apartment. You were planning to use me to get the house, then divorce me and take everything. You called me pathetic. You said you'd been pretending to care about me for 4 years. You said my only purpose was helping you get a house, so you could post about your divorce glow up for Instagram. Her face drained of color. She tried to speak, but no words came out. You planned to dump me publicly in front of both our families, to humiliate me for content. I continued, keeping my voice even, but the anger was building now. Well, congratulations, Sloan. You get the public breakup. Just not the way you planned. The silence in the room was deafening. My mom's face was unreadable, but I could see the anger in her eyes. My dad's jaw was set, and my brothers looked at Sloan with disdain. Her parents were visibly uncomfortable, but Sloan didn't seem to notice. She was still trying to come up with something to say, but the words wouldn't come. Are you serious? She finally asked, her voice a little shaky now. You've been spying on me. No, I said, shaking my head. I wasn't spying. Your window was open, and you were talking about real estate fraud. That's how I found out. I didn't have to spy. I looked at her one last time. We're done. Sloan's face crumpled, and she looked at me as if I had just ripped her world apart. But I wasn't done yet. And the house. I already backed out of the deal. It's over. Her mother stood up, mouth open, clearly shocked. You can't do this. she said, but Robert, Sloan's dad, didn't meet anyone's eyes. He just stared at his plate, his face red with shame. I didn't wait for Sloan to respond. I turned to my family. I'm done. I'm going home. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and without another word, I walked out of the restaurant. The door closed behind me, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. I woke up the next morning to the sound of my phone buzzing. I groggily reached for it, blinking against the sunlight that filtered through the blinds. I wasn't sure what time it was, but the rush of notifications made it clear that something had happened. My heart sank as I opened my messages. There were 33 missed texts from Sloan. 33. I barely even knew where to start. Some were filled with confusion, others with desperation. The messages were a whirlwind of emotions: angry, bargaining, pleading. She started with a simple, "We need to talk," followed by a flood of, "Please call me, I don't understand. What is happening?" And then, "I love you, you're making a huge mistake." By the time I reached the end, she was accusing me of ruining everything, sending a final message that was full of venom. "You'll regret this. Everyone thinks you're insane." I didn't even bother replying. I blocked her number and set the phone down. I was done. It was hard not to feel some level of satisfaction. But the satisfaction was fleeting. The anger, the hurt, that was still there, lingering under the surface. I had made my choice, but it didn't make everything feel right. Nothing felt right. I didn't want to be consumed by this. I had already wasted too much time on someone who never cared about me in the way I had cared about her. I dragged myself out of bed and shuffled into the kitchen, needing to clear my head. The apartment felt quiet, almost suffocating in its stillness. The scent of yesterday's coffee still hung in the air, stale and cold. I didn't even bother making a fresh cup. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, trying to shake off the lingering sense of unease. I had to move forward. But first, I needed to make sure everything was set for the next steps. It wasn't just about ending things with Sloan. It was about getting control back, taking control of my own life, my future. It wasn't going to be easy. The doorbell rang about an hour later. I wasn't surprised. I figured Sloan might show up, but I wasn't ready for this. When I looked through the peephole, I saw her standing there, looking disheveled, wearing sweats, her eyes puffy from crying. She was holding a coffee cup, like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I felt a rush of frustration, but I opened the door anyway. "Please, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. She was trying to play the victim, trying to act like she was the one hurt here. It made me sick to my stomach. I stood there, blocking the door slightly, just enough to make sure she didn't try to force her way in. "You've got 5 minutes," I said, my voice calm. But it carried the weight of everything I had been holding back. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the apartment like she was trying to take in some version of what used to be our life. She walked toward the living room, glancing at the furniture, the small things that once made this place feel like home. But there was nothing here for her now. She started talking, her words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm sorry, okay? I know I messed up. I wasn't thinking. You have to understand. This whole thing with the house, it's been driving me crazy. I was just trying to figure out a way to make everything work." Her voice cracked a little, but I didn't feel bad. Not anymore. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I just stared at her. It was almost laughable, the way she thought that after everything, after the lies, the betrayal, she could just show up here, apologize, and expect it to fix everything. Finally, I spoke. "You're sorry you got caught. Not sorry for what you did. There's a big difference." Her face faltered, but she quickly covered it up with another smile. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear, She paused, as if searching for the right words, but I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. "You planned this for months, Sloan," I said, cutting her off. "The house, the wedding, the divorce. You were going to use me for everything I had, and then throw me away. And now you're here, trying to apologize like that makes it okay. She took a step toward me, her hands trembling. I was just trying to make it work. I wasn't thinking clearly. But please don't do this. We can fix this. We can figure it out. You can't fix this, I said, shaking my head. It's too late for that. You don't get to walk back everything you've done. Her eyes welled with tears, but I wasn't going to fall for it. I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. Sloan stood there for a moment, clearly unsure of what to do next. The tension in the room was thick. But then, she shifted her weight, and I saw something change in her eyes. A flash of something cold. Something I hadn't seen before. You think you're so smart, don't you? She said. Her voice suddenly sharp. You think you've won, but you haven't? You're going to end up alone, you know. You'll always be alone, just like you always have been. You think this is going to make you feel better, but it won't. I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I had heard it all before, just her last desperate attempt to hold on to control. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice low but steady. I'll be alone. But I'll be a hell of a lot better off than being with you. She blinked, her face reddening with frustration. You're pathetic. She spat, turning to leave. You'll regret this. You'll see. I didn't say anything else. I just watched her walk out the door, her shoulders stiff with pride, but her footsteps heavy. Once the door clicked shut behind her, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence fill the space. It was over. Finally. But I knew the next few days weren't going to be easy. Sloan wasn't going to give up that easily. She was going to fight. And she wasn't going to stop until she had tried everything to get back in my life. But I wasn't going to let her. I had made my decision, and I wasn't going to back down. I looked around the apartment, now completely empty of the life we'd built together. It was just me now. And for the first time in months, I felt free. The days following the dinner were a whirlwind. At first, I felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe freely, but that sense of freedom was quickly overshadowed by the growing tension in the pit of my stomach. I knew this wasn't over. Sloan wasn't the type to give up easily, and she sure wasn't going to let me walk away from everything so easily. The first few nights after the dinner, I stayed home. It was a weird mix of feeling at peace, yet constantly waiting for something to happen. My phone stayed quiet, except for a couple of random texts from friends checking in on me. But Sloan, she didn't reach out again, not right away. I figured she was taking her time to regroup, to come up with her next move. But I knew it wouldn't be long. Then, on the third day, I saw her car parked outside my building. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't ready to see her, not yet. But I knew that I couldn't hide forever. She was about to make her next move. And I had to be ready. I stayed inside, hoping she wouldn't knock on my door. But the minute I heard the soft buzz of the intercom, I knew it was her. I stared at the screen, watching her stand there, looking like she was trying to make herself seem small. Her face was drawn, her eyes tired and red, probably from crying. But even then, I knew it was just another act. I pressed the button and asked, "What do you want?" "Please, I need to get my things." Sloan's voice came through, shaky and quiet. "I know you threw my stuff outside, but I need what's left." I stared at the screen for a long moment, trying to decide what to do. I knew what I wanted to do, tell her to leave and never come back. But there was a part of me that wanted to see her squirm, to make her feel what I had felt all those years. I knew I couldn't let her back in, but I wasn't about to let her think she could waltz back into my life as if nothing had happened. I buzzed her up. The door opened, and Sloan stepped inside, her movements stiff, like she wasn't sure what kind of reception she was going to get. She didn't look at me as she walked through the door. Just kept her eyes on the floor. She was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, clearly not the same confident woman who'd strutted through the restaurant a few nights ago. "Where's my stuff?" she asked quietly, looking up at me finally. I pointed toward the closet, just past the bathroom door. "It's in there. You've got 5 minutes. Take what's yours and get out." She didn't argue. She walked straight toward the closet, her steps slow, hesitant. I could see her hands trembling as she reached for a bag of clothes, her fingers brushing over them like she wasn't sure what she was taking. She had to know what was left. She knew everything in this apartment was just stuff. Things that didn't matter anymore. Her friend Taryn, the one who'd been so vocal about the plan, had followed her up. She stood in the living room, eyes scanning the apartment, like she was trying to get some kind of read on me. I wasn't in the mood to deal with her. She crossed her arms. "Nice place," she said, almost like she was inspecting it. "Must suck to know you're going to die alone in it." I didn't even look at her. I kept my eyes on Sloan as she started shoving her things into a garbage bag. A pair of shoes, a makeup bag. It was all so pathetic. This wasn't the woman I thought I was in love with. This was a stranger. Taryn took a step forward, and I finally turned to face her. "Stop being a child and let her take her stuff," she said, trying to sound tough. "She had her chance to take it," I said, keeping my voice low but steady. "It's not my fault if she didn't get it when she had the opportunity." "Stop being so dramatic," Taryn muttered, but I saw the slight tremble in her voice. She didn't like that I wasn't reacting the way she expected. She thought she could intimidate me into letting her stay in the picture. But I wasn't having it. Sloan looked up at me from the closet, her eyes red from crying, but there was something else there too. Something colder. "You're really going to be this way?" she asked, her voice hoarse. I didn't answer at first. Instead, I let the silence hang between us. I wasn't going to apologize. I wasn't going to let her spin this into some tragic narrative, where I was the one who didn't understand. She had manipulated me for so long that I didn't care what she thought anymore. She picked up a small purse from the floor, her fingers trembling as she put it in the bag. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. You know that, right?" "No," I said. "You're sorry you got caught. Not sorry for what you did." Her head jerked up, her face flushing with frustration. "You think I wanted this to happen?" she said, her voice rising. "You think I wanted to hurt you like this?" "I think you wanted to get everything you could out of me," I replied, my voice still calm. "And you were willing to ruin everything for it." The words hit her like a slap, and I saw her flinch. For the first time, I saw something real in her eyes. The mask was slipping. "But I wasn't done yet. You're not going to apologize your way back into my life," I said. "It's over. You can't fix what you've done." Sloan just stood there, holding the bag in her hands, staring at me. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She turned to Taryn, and I could see the tension between them. Taryn shook her head. "You're pathetic," she muttered under her breath as she walked toward the door. Sloan looked at me one last time, her mascara running down her cheeks, her face twisted in a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You think you won?" she asked, her voice thick with contempt. "No," I said. "I think I finally saw you for who you really are." She glared at me, dropped her bag on the floor, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she looked over her shoulder one last time. "You'll regret this," she said. I didn't respond. I just watched her walk out of my life for good. I shut the door behind me and locked it. The silence in the apartment was deafening. But this time, it was different. This time, I was finally at peace. The days after Sloan left were quiet, almost too quiet. I spent most of my time at work, focusing on the small things. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts, alone with everything that had just happened. I kept expecting something to happen, expecting Sloan to come back. But the silence stretched on, suffocating and heavy. It wasn't until the weekend that everything changed. Saturday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee and scrolling through my phone. The buzz of a message broke the monotony, and I picked up my phone, only to see it was from Sloan. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't open it right away. I just stared at her name on the screen, the last remnants of everything I'd known flashing before my eyes. I opened the message. It was short, the kind of message you send when you're either desperate or you're trying to sound calm. Please call me. We need to talk. I don't understand what's happening. It felt like the same tired plea, like a script she'd used before. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing to say. The last time we'd spoken, I had told her everything I needed to. I had exposed the truth of who she really was, and now she was asking for forgiveness. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I blocked her number. A few hours later, the buzzing started again. This time, it was her mother, Valentine. She left several voicemails, each one getting more frantic than the last. "Honey, I just want to talk. Please, don't do this. You're breaking her heart. Please, just listen to me. Sloan needs you, and she's a mess without you." I turned off my phone and shoved it into the drawer. I didn't want to hear any more of it. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. They were all just trying to make me feel guilty for something I hadn't done. Sloan had made her choices. She had been the one to lie, to manipulate, to take me for granted. And now, she was trying to spin this into something it wasn't. But as the day went on, my piece started to unravel. I kept hearing the messages in my head, the same words replaying. Sloan needs you. She's a mess. The guilt started to creep in, but I shoved it away. She didn't need me. She never did. I wasn't her savior. I was her pawn. Later that evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard something from the parking lot below. It was a sound I hadn't heard in days, the low rumble of Sloan's car pulling in. I froze. My heart pounded. She was here. I wasn't sure what to expect, but part of me braced for a confrontation. I knew she wouldn't just let me go without trying to get something from me. She had already taken so much. She was probably here to plead, to beg me to take her back. But I wasn't going to fall for it. The knock on my door was soft at first, but persistent. I walked toward it, hesitating before opening it. I knew exactly who it was. When I opened the door, there she stood. Sloan. Her face was streaked with mascara, her eyes swollen from crying. She had that same desperate look in her eyes, like she thought if she could just get me to listen, it would all be okay. I don't know what to do anymore," she said, her voice raw. "I'm sorry. I really am. I've made a huge mistake." I just stared at her. There it was. The apology. The one she had been saving for when she thought it was convenient. The words sounded empty now, like they didn't even belong to her. "You're sorry for what exactly?" I asked. "Sorry you got caught. Sorry that you lost everything you thought you could control?" Her face fell, the tears starting up again. "No," she whispered. "I'm sorry for everything. I messed up, I was stupid. I should have never." "Stop," I said, cutting her off. "I don't want to hear it." She blinked, looking confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm done listening to you, Sloan," I said. "You don't get to apologize your way back into my life. You had your chance. You had all the chances you needed." Her voice shook. "Please don't do this. I was wrong. I can't lose you. I love you." The words hit me, but only for a moment. I didn't believe them. Not anymore. I had loved her. I had believed in everything she had told me, but now, I saw it all for what it was. She wasn't sorry because she loved me. She was sorry because she had lost control of the situation. "I don't care about your apologies anymore," I said, my voice cold. "I don't care about anything you have to say. You made your choice." She stepped forward, her hand reaching out as if she was going to grab me, to pull me back into the life we had. But I stepped back, shaking my head. "I've already moved on, Sloan," I said. "You don't get to come back and rewrite this story. You don't get to walk back all the damage you've done." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, staring after me, her hand still outstretched, like she could make me change my mind. But I didn't look back. I could hear her sniffle as I closed the door, but I didn't care. The silence that followed felt like freedom. I leaned against the door, closing my eyes for a moment, just taking it all in. It was over. She was gone, and I wasn't gonna let her drag me back into that life. The next time I saw her, I would be stronger. I wouldn't let her break me. Not anymore. But deep down, I knew she wasn't done. Sloan was a fighter, and I wasn't naive enough to think this was the last time she would try to come back. But I had already made my choice, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. I could feel the weight lifting from my chest, but I knew the battle wasn't over yet. I just hoped I was ready for whatever came next. 3 weeks passed since I last saw Sloan, but it felt like a lifetime. The first few days after she left were a blur of silence, a quiet I had never known. For the first time in months, I was truly alone. It wasn't the loneliness that hurt. It was the peace. The kind of peace I hadn't realized I was missing. But even in that peace, there were ripples of discomfort. Sloan wasn't gone for good. I knew that. I was waiting for her to make her move. And she did. One Friday morning, as I was getting ready for work, I received an email. The subject line was simple: War Court Hearing Notice. My stomach sank when I opened it. It was from the courthouse. Sloan had filed for a restraining order against me. At first, I couldn't even believe what I was reading. She had the audacity to accuse me of harassment, claiming that I had been threatening her after our breakup. It wasn't just a slap in the face, it was a calculated move. She was trying to make me the villain, to twist the narrative and paint herself as the victim. She was playing the game, manipulating the system just like she had manipulated me. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever, trying to process what I was supposed to do next. The email included a date for the hearing, and for a moment, I thought about ignoring it. I could just move on with my life, pretend like it wasn't happening. But then the reality hit me. If I didn't show up, she would win by default. She would make me look like the bad guy, and she would get away with everything. I couldn't let that happen. I gathered all the evidence I had. The security footage of her keying my truck, the text messages, the Venmo receipts for the $3,000 she had paid to avoid a police report. I spent hours organizing everything, making sure I had all the facts laid out. There was no way I was going to let her twist the truth. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The day of the hearing arrived. I wore a dark suit and tie, something professional, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that followed me every step of the way. I knew the court proceedings wouldn't be easy, and I knew that Sloan would be there with her lawyer, trying to spin her story in front of a judge. But I was ready. I had the truth on my side, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate the situation any further. When I arrived at the courthouse, I could feel the tension in my chest tightening. I signed in and took a seat in the waiting area, my hands clammy as I waited for the case to be called. It felt surreal, like this was all some bad dream, and any minute now I'd wake up and everything would go back to normal. But it didn't. Sloan entered the courtroom with her lawyer, a public defender who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. They walked past me without so much as a glance. Sloan's face was hard, but I could see the cracks in her facade. Her eyes were red-rimmed, probably from the stress of the past few weeks. But she was trying her best to look like she had it all together. Her makeup was carefully applied, the lines of her lips tight, but inside, I knew she was trembling. The judge called the case, and we both stood as our names were announced. Sloan's lawyer presented her case first, painting a picture of me as the abusive ex, the one who had been harassing her, threatening her with the security footage. His argument was weak, and I could see the judge's eyes narrow as he spoke. I could feel the weight of the moment. This was the turning point. And I wasn't going to back down. When it was my turn, I stood up and walked to the front of the courtroom. I was calm, collected, even though my heart was pounding in my chest. I looked at the judge and spoke clearly. Your Honor, I'm here because I have been the victim of fraud and manipulation. Sloan has been using me for months, and I have proof. I've provided security footage of her keying my truck, text messages where she planned to leave me and take everything, and receipts showing that I had to force her to pay for the damages. I've been the one threatened. I've been the one manipulated. Sloan's lawyer tried to object, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. We're listening to the testimony, he said. I continued. Sloan knew exactly what she was doing. She planned to use me for a house, for followers, for content. And now, she's trying to turn the tables and make me the villain. I'm asking for this restraining order to be dismissed. I'm asking for the truth to be heard. Sloan's face twisted with anger as she heard my words. She stood up, trying to interrupt, but the judge told her to sit back down. The room was heavy with tension, and I could feel everyone in the room leaning in, listening. They were hearing the truth. The judge looked over the evidence, the footage, the text messages, the receipts. He didn't look impressed by Sloan's lawyer's arguments. After a long silence, he spoke. I find the evidence in favor of the defendant. Sloan, I'm denying your request for a restraining order. You've attempted to manipulate this court with false claims. This hearing is over. It was a blow. A heavy blow. Sloan's face went pale as she realized she had lost. Her lawyer stood up, looking defeated, and Sloan quickly looked away from me. I didn't care about the satisfaction of watching her lose. It wasn't about that. It was about standing up for myself, about making sure the truth was heard. Sloan turned and walked out of the courtroom, her back straight, her head held high, but there was no denying the shame in her eyes. She had lost everything, and I had won. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I had come out on top, but I did feel like I had finally reclaimed my life. Sloan was no longer a part of it. The manipulation was over. As I walked out of the courtroom, I looked down at my phone. The messages were still there, her texts, her apologies, her excuses. But I didn't need to read them anymore. I wasn't her fool. I wasn't her pawn. I was done. I had my life back. And no one was going to take it from me again.